Today I want to talk about a match fishing experience from long ago, back in the late 80s, when having some knowledge proved to be very, very useful on a particular match. Back in the 80s or 70s and 80s and even well into the 90s, Christchurch Angling Club used to have a big annual Christmas match. At its very peak, they had 200 pegs on it, and for that they not only had all of the lower Stour, they put in the Moors River and possibly the Avon, and I think it proved to be pretty chaotic in the end. However, after that experience, they went back to their standard 120 pegs, which was the same pegging that they would have with the winter leagues on the lower Stour. So that was a load of water up from below Iford Bridge, down through Dudsbury, down to just below New Road Bridge, and then they would have the tidal Stour from about half a mile above Iford Bridge, was the boundary for the bottom end of the Throop fishery in those days, what was actually Beat 5. Nowadays Beat 3 extends below that down to New Iford Bridge, and below that is the tidal Stour. But back then that was the proper Throop boundary, and Christchurch didn't have access to that, so their match on the tidal started at the Throop boundary above Iford Bridge and then went down through below Iford Bridge, down through what's known as the Pony Fields, the Dumps, which is down near the railway, and then down at Tuckton, above Tuckton Bridge, and then below Tuckton Bridge down to Wick Ferry. So 120 pegs. And this match could be very good, very bad. You needed a good draw. On the days when the river was spot on, and we're talking about the first Sunday in December usually, if it was a mild day and the river was right, there were thousands and thousands of dace down there. Some pegs would produce chub up at Longham. There would be catches of roach, occasionally bream. It wasn't unusual for some quite good specimens to be weighed in. I can remember at least twice £2 roach being caught by people during that match. Coming up to this particular match, I probably fished this match before then, and I decided on the Saturday, the match being on the Sunday, to have a fish above Iford Bridge. And I went down there and I went about 6 or 7 pegs above Iford Bridge on the Bournemouth side, the south bank, and I couldn't get a bite. The river was a little bit on the clear side, didn't have much colour, quite a nice steady flow, steady tide, not a big tide or anything like that. And then at 1 o'clock it just turned on, started to catch fish, and I suppose I had about 5 or 6 pounds of small dace, nothing special, just sort of 2-ounce dace, the odd tiny ones, the odd better ones. And there were other anglers down there the same day, and I walked around, and it seemed to be a bit further up, sort of 8, 9, 10 pegs up. They were catching before I was. They were catching at about 12, and then as you came down the river, the fish sort of, for whatever reason, they turned on about 1 o'clock. Well, come the following day, I drew only a couple of pegs away from where I'd fished the day before, and I thought, well, maybe they're not going to bite till 1 o'clock. It might be a slow, patient game. Lovely glide between some clumps of willow bushes, and below me there was about a good 30 yards of willow bushes, so you couldn't get near the bank for 30 yards, and then below that was the next angler, and then sort of 20 yard, 25 yard intervals down to New Iford Bridge. And like I say, it's about 6 pegs above the bridge. Above me was the shallower swims with the outflow from what they called Sheepwash, which was the old course of the river, and then there were pegs above that. And I sort of thought, well, maybe I'm competing with these other pegs. but we would see it. It seemed that I had a reasonable chance of catching fish there. I set up fairly straightforward back then. I had my John Dean stick float rod set up with a Mitchell match, a John Dean stick float 5 number 4, size 20, micro barbed fine wire hook. Almost certainly fishing bronze maggots, probably had half a gallon of maggots, and I started fishing away, trotting down, and the time ticked away, and after half an hour the float was right down the swim, probably 25 yards down, and I pulled it back to retrieve it, and I thought there's a fish on there, and up came one of these sort of 2.5 ounce dace. I thought that's a start, I've got a fish, and it's only about just gone 10:30, and over the next half an hour I'd got half a dozen by 11 o'clock, and they're starting to come up the swim a little bit, very much fishing my own match. And I'm thinking 4 hours to go, if I can get another 50 at this size, I could get 7 or 8 pounds. Got a fairly good idea what they're going to weigh. 50 odd dace, 7 or 8 pounds. That'll get a reasonable price, might be a bit better than a box of biscuits. I carried on fishing the following hour, carried on catching steadily. By 12 o'clock, so 2 hours gone, I've got my 50 fish, and I'm thinking, well, I've got 7 or 8 pounds. If I can get another 50 in the following 3 hours, then 100 fish could be talking 13, 14 pounds. Now you're starting to talk. Might not make the top 10 for a turkey, but definitely a decent weight. And all the time just fishing down there. Another hour goes by, now 1 o'clock, and I'm thinking I've got 100 fish now. I've got that, getting 50 an hour. It's not fast, it's just going down, just putting it, it's perfect conditions. It might be December, it's a mild day, there's no wind, the stick float's going down, just little bites hitting them, not missing any bites at all, which is quite remarkable. Not losing any fish, just hitting them, and just goes down, settles, the feed's going in right. No one above me is affecting my fishing because of the bushes as well above me. And after 3 hours I've got 100 fish, and I'm thinking I've now got my stone, maybe. If I can get another 50, I'm thinking, are they going to go off? Am I going to run out of fish? And just after 1 o'clock, the guy came up from the peg below me. He said, are you catching? I said, yeah, I'm catching small dace steadily. He said, I haven't had a bite. And I'm thinking, what? He said, I've been sat on the feeder. I tried the float at the start, didn't get any fish, and no one's caught anything down there. They'd all switched to a feeder. So he watched me for about 10 minutes catch some dace, went running back to his peg and starts float fishing, and started to get a few fish, I think, and I couldn't see him. So I carried on catching. With an hour to go, I'm thinking I've now got 150 fish, so now I'm talking possibly over 20 pounds. So that knowledge from the day before of them feeding at 1 o'clock didn't seem to be affecting me. The fish have come on as soon as I've fed it for half an hour. The fish have come on quite nicely. But below me, it seems to be they didn't have any fish to catch till 1 o'clock. So I must have been right on the border of why they fed at that time. I have no idea. An hour to go, I'm thinking if I can get to 200, then I'm really looking at, I'm already probably got over 20 pounds. I'm looking at one of the top 10 prizes will get a turkey dinner. And I was able to speed up a little bit that last hour and get 65 fish instead of the sort of steady 50. I don't know why I speeded up, but I did. And I got to the end of the match, 215 dace, and I weighed in 29 pounds 1 ounce. there were other good weights a bit further up in the same section. I think someone had sort of £15, £14, maybe £18. And we got back to the draw, trying to think where the draw would have been there, whether it was a club called Toc H, probably Toc H, which was close to Iford Bridge. And of course the rumours are flying around and who's caught what and whatever, and the people running it are putting it all up together. And one angler had done well at Longham, and his name was Tony Bryant, and he came over to me and he said, "Hi Mark, I hear you've done well." He said, "What did you get?" I said, 29. And he thought I meant £20, 9 ounces. So he went to me, "No, I beat you 20, I've got 2015. I said, no. I got my card out, my weight card, and I said, no, £29 and 1 ounce. I said, I was just telling you the short version. Oh, he went. And he was second. So definitely where sometimes the practice can give you just a hint of what might happen. There was no logic to what happened, why they didn't feed below me until 1 o'clock. And the day before it, the pattern wasn't the same. The tide was probably slightly different. And the angler below me, who'd gone running back to his peg, did end up with about £5 or £6 in the last 2 hours. And the anglers below him, I think they had £3 or £4. But that match stayed at 120 pegs for quite a while. But by the very late 90s, possibly the early 2000s, it started to drop off rapidly. The 120 used to be about 60 anglers fishing club matches back in those days as an average. But when it came to the Christmas match, the people who'd fish odd club matches and people who we'll call them veterans, because I'm not a veteran, and people who were even older than me would say, well, I can't be bothered with the regular matches, but this is the chance to catch up with old friends and say hello, and I'll turn up just for that one match a year. And there would be massive prize lists of the 120. There might be 80 or 90 or 100 prizes, and some of the old wranglers, they'd go up and come 85th or something like that, and there'd be big cheers and clapping and all the rest of it. So it was a happy occasion most of the time anyway. So it was always good for people to catch up. Until next time, that's goodbye for now.